What's something that you'll never share with your parents? Viewers Edition. Story 1. Ever since I became an adult, got married, and had kids, I delight in telling my dad the crappy things I did as a teen that he had no idea about. He was a dope addict, sober 27 years, yet strict with me, his only child, and his daughter to an extent of a lot of lectures on not having intercourse, yet he let me go on the pill and eventually move in with my boyfriend, now husband. So explaining to him how at 12 my cousin and I could sneak out of grandma's house at 3 a.m. to go down to the local Arco station and bribe adults into buying us beer? Funny as hell! Especially because I was relatively the quiet good girl, and my sister, same mom, different dads, was in juvenile hall before she turned 14. I was the good kid he didn't worry about. That was ditching school behind his back and getting my tweaker cousins to call my school and tell them I was sick. Why ditch? I was really getting behind on my soap operas. If my folks had figured out how to program the VCR so I didn't miss The Young and the Restless, I would have missed a lot less school. As a parent, all I can think is how they could have easily held that recording over my head daily to get my homework and chores done. But the worst one yet, we lived in an apartment complex and as a resident knew how to break in and out. It was as easy as knowing what window on the units you could slightly push and slide back the lock to get in. Well, my friends stayed over and we didn't want to go to school. This was junior high and they were experimenting with year-round. Meaning there were 4 different tracks that came and went. Because it was poorly executed, there were weeks where, say, yellow track and blue track overlapped for a couple days and had the same classroom, which was insanity. So it was one of those types of days where we knew no real school would happen. They also did this whole, I was on a blue track, we were off for a month, came back and did a month of review, then as soon as we started to learn things again, it was time to share the classroom, and then get ready for our next month off. So yeah, it was poorly executed and no one learned anything during that time. Lots of ditching happening. Anyhow, my friend and I were ditching, but we couldn't stay at my apartment because my mom was there. We had to go somewhere till she left. I can honestly say this was the day Magic Johnson announced he had HIV, because later in the day we went to my cousin's and that was on the TV. So we broke into an empty apartment that had already been cleaned up and was ready to be shown to a prospective renter. We slept on the floor for a bit, then we were bored to death. We also had our school bags and for some reason a Playgirl mag. For anyone who doesn't know, Playgirl is like Playboy, only instead of naked women, it's naked men. We also had tape because of school stuff. So we opened up cabinets and taped up pages from said Playgirl mag so that when one opened a cabinet, boom, naked dude, right in the face. We only did this on cabinets that adults could reach, however. I do love the morals of, we're going to put up pictures of naked dudes, but we're going to make sure that only adults are seeing that, and I can appreciate that. I could also just appreciate all the other wild stuff you were doing, but your parent considering you the good kid, and so therefore you could just kind of get away with stuff. I was the good kid, and so I could get away with stuff. I usually didn't, because I was a good kid, mostly. Not completely. Story 2. I kinda knew I wasn't biologically related to my dad when I was around 7. Pretty smart kid. They officially told me when I was 12. I had to nod along to make it seem like I wasn't completely uninterested in something I already half confirmed. Story 3. I ordered a book online, and because I was a teen with no bank account, I ordered it with an option to pay the postman at the arrival. The book arrived when I wasn't home, but my grandma was. She paid and told me not to give her back the money, but to treat it as a gift for that church ceremony I had she didn't give me anything for. What Grandma didn't know was the book was a collection of gay love stories. I've been heavily into yaoi since I turned 16, and nobody in my Catholic family knew, otherwise half of them would have a heart attack. I never told Grandma what was in the package. Dad took the book once and looked at the cover, and I internally freaked out, but luckily he didn't turn it to read the description, and the front didn't betray the content. Dad still doesn't know, but my mom does. Story 4. I've got something similar to the last story. About halfway through my CS degree in college, I wanted to get into PC gaming. I was big into gaming and always loathed that my office desktop wasn't powerful enough for much. In the late stages of my degree work, I did need something more powerful for my schoolwork, so I approached my dad and said I wanted to get a new computer but couldn't afford one myself. He asked what sort of specs I was looking for and why. I explained that I needed something more powerful to handle the likes of Android Studio and VS. I gave him the specs for a decently high-end gaming computer. He is very tech-savvy and came back to me like an hour later and said something along the lines of, "You're trying to get a gaming PC, aren't you?" To which I said, "Well, I need a better computer for my schoolwork, but I also wanted something better for gaming, so why not get one that can do both?" He sighed and agreed to pay $500, and I was to cover the rest. I got an $1,100 mid to high-end gaming computer and was happy. Honestly, needing a powerful computer is such a wonderful gift because it can also very easily become a gaming computer. Sure, you need it for 3D modeling or for programming or this or that, or in my case, I needed a powerful one for video editing and stuff like that. And it's like, well, if my computer needs to be powerful and have good graphics for video editing, might as well be good for gaming too. Story 5. In 6th grade, my mom wouldn't let me take my phone to school, but I did it anyway. From October to June. I couldn't really do anything because I didn't have a number or cellular service at the time. Honestly, it was just to be rebellious. Anyways, we were at one of the many family gatherings we have around the holidays, and my mom was talking about how I wasn't allowed to take my phone to school. That was probably the funniest and most ironic moment I can remember. Story 6. Back in the 90s, my dad actually got arrested at least once, either driving away from the police while drunk or DUI, and he never told his parents about that incident. Even when his dad passed, he never told them a single detail. Story 7. This was before I was a teenager. I was 8, but I used to have a phobia of toilets because I believed monsters used to snatch children from the toilet itself. So I used the backyard as my toilet. My parents noticed an accumulation of poo randomly appearing all over the yard. My dad at the time believed it was the neighbor's dog getting into our yard and pooping in there. When he would get rid of the poo, he'd fling it over the fence into their yard. This caused arguments to happen between my parents and the neighbors. The thing was, their dog did have a history of escaping into our yard and doing its business there, so for a long time, that dog took the blame until my phobia subsided. I still will never tell my parents this. Okay, I have to ask, was your phobia of toilets because of some old VHS tape back when horror movies just had weird little puppet monsters all the time? And I think it might have been like Critters or Critters adjacent. But back in like late 80s, early 90s, there was some horror movie with a little puppety creature that was like sitting on or coming out of a toilet. And that freaked me out as a kid too. And I would try and get my siblings to wait around the bathroom when I had to use it when I was like 6. That's true. Story 8. One of my English tests. I'm a writer. I love writing stories, and I'm slowly getting better. However, my favorite thing to write is kind of angsty stuff. I don't know, it's just the easiest thing for me to write. So, in one of our English tests, we were given a story about 2 bullies and had to rewrite a part from another perspective. I chose to write from the perspective of the kid who was getting bullied and wrote about her depression, fear, difficulties at home, and finally, her self-termination pretty detailed. I don't want to show that to my dad. Might not be as spectacular as all the drug or sneaking out stories, but I don't do drugs and never really tried sneaking out either. Worst I did was take some of my dad's ALC and obviously drink it, or staying at school during random crap with my friends instead of going home, but who hasn't? Story 9. Well, my dad doesn't know I somehow managed to walk in on him in the bath once without him knowing, saw everything, quietly and slowly walk back out. If you can't fake parent signatures, just trace them like I used to. Works a treat. The correct response when your dad says bloody teenagers when he sees the smiley face you spray painted in the road directly outside your own house is, yeah, kids these days don't have anything better to do. He still doesn't know. Story 10. I brought my dad a permission slip at the beginning of middle school and he said, you should just sign it yourself so you don't need to bother with learning my signature. I rejected his offer because I'm a good boy. So yeah, pro tip, just sign everything yourself from the beginning. Okay, That's a pretty good gamble, and it's pretty smart, unless your dad eventually goes to like a parent-teacher conference and the teacher's just like, "No, this is a slip that you sign," and the dad's like, "That's not my signature," and suddenly unravels your whole web, and then you're in a whole bunch of trouble. Or maybe you get, maybe your dad's a spy and appreciates it. I don't know, but I doubt the story ends that well. Story 11. Oh, the things we did and got away with. I'm 67. No doubt my kids did the same. They are good, solid adults today, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. We all made it to adulthood unscathed. Story 12. My brother and I used to do a lot of things as teens. Just for you to imagine, when I was 15 and my bro was 13, we were allowed to stay at our country house in the village my parents are from, but was on the other side of the village to where my grandparents were living, so you can imagine 20 teenagers unsupervised, smoking, drinking, etc. The only condition was that if anyone complained about us, our privileges were revoked. So, being used to that kind of freedom, we did our own thing when we came back from vacations and were back in school, and our parents trusted us to care for ourselves and not get into serious trouble. When we moved from our parents' house, we started telling in detail what, how, and when we did everything. The statute of limitations kicked in when we were on our own. Surprisingly, they knew most of what we did, but didn't say anything because they were proud of our resourcefulness. We had a neighbor that would call our parents every couple of days with reports. Pros, I started cooking, do it yourself. We broke a lot of crap in our house and had to be mended so we would not get in trouble. Working odd jobs, we needed money for alcohol and cigs, and lots of other good and nice traits that helped us adults. Cons, too independent and authority issues. The thing is, talking with our friend group about what we used to, and most of them would say, if I'm going to let my kids do what we did, mostly because we were one bad idea from getting into serious trouble with the law and or with a serious injury. It's a miracle that we got away from that safely. But nonetheless, it's fun laughing with my parents and recounting all the things we did. I mean, I feel like this story is kind of too far to the extreme of, I think that most teenagers and even, preteens need to be given more responsibility. I think it's important to give them both responsibility and trust. It's all part of becoming a well-rounded adult, and I think too many parents don't give teenagers that. I think this might be giving them maybe a little bit too much. A middle ground sounds just about right. Story 13. During COVID, I started doing a lot of acid, usually at a friend's house overnight, so my mom wouldn't find me and freak out. One day I was tripping and she comes in and asks me why I never leave my room anymore. I asked her if the pandemic was ever going to end and if the world would go back to normal, and I almost started crying. She did too, talking about it. Pretty real convo, but she never found out I was on acid, only I was depressed. Story 14. I actually broke my monitor in a fit of rage a few months ago. I never told my parents or anyone about it. I faked falling and breaking it accidentally. I had to wait a month to finally use it again. Story 15. Last year, one Friday, 3 out of 6 teachers weren't there. The school had emailed us the previous day to inform us. Because the school couldn't change the hours, we had to go 3 hours late to school. So we would go to school around 11 a.m. and leave at 1:20 p.m. Of course, all my classmates and me were pretty peed because we could normally go at 8:15 a.m. and leave at around 11 a.m. I begged my parents not to go because I would be absent for only 3 hours. Plus it was Friday, so for me it was one more reason not to go. More fun. But my parents said no, but I wanted to rebel. I'm a pretty quiet kid, so I knew my parents would never figure it out. Fortunately, even though my mom is the last to leave the house, by the time I was supposed to leave that day, she was already gone. I felt guilty, but also like a bad A. They never found out about that, and I'm thinking of telling them when I graduate, which is still a pretty long way till then since I'm 14, but yeah. Story 16. Alcohol. I had my first drink when I was 14, and me and my dad both knew he was the one who gave it to me, laugh my butt off. And keep it a locked secret when my mom is around. I'll tell her after I'm 21 and not throw up on beer or the margaritas they get at the beach. And I'll be like, I have a good tolerance. I've been doing it since I was 14. I'll just go on the record saying I don't really encourage anyone to get into drinking when you're underage. Like, if your parents let you have a glass of wine with dinner, that's fine. It's supervised. But kids, it's really not worth it. It can mess up your life in some ways and everything. Just wait till you're older. You could appreciate it a little bit better, okay? You'll be fine. Story 17. When my sister and I were like 8 or so, we thought it was funny to open our window and go out onto the back porch in the winter. One night my sister opened the window but told me it was closed, so I threw one of her favorite toys out the window knowing it was open. I didn't think she was actually going to get it, but she did. I was kind of jealous, don't ask me why, I couldn't tell you, but I wanted to go out the window too. So I took one of my favorite toys and threw it in. I ran quickly but quietly to the window and climbed out. I wasn't wearing any shoes and got a splinter on my foot. We are 17 now and will still never tell them. LOL. Story 18. So when I was in college, I was still living at home. The deal was I would stay till I graduate so long as my grades were good. I was also learning to drive and had such severe anxiety I barely passed the test on my second try. Well, my mom got frustrated I wasn't actually getting it, and she grounded me from seeing my boyfriend until I stopped having anxiety attacks while driving. She thought she could berate the anxiety out of me, which did not work. However, I had broken up with said boyfriend 3 months before, so I was grounded from seeing an ex I was no longer dating. She never found out the truth. Story 19. I still keep a secret Rule 34 collection after the incident where she looked into my phone one night without telling me and discovered my first Rule 34 collection. I've been keeping another one to this day, half because my hormones are still raging at the moment and maybe I have a legitimate Rule 34 addiction. The other half is because I want to spite her for disrespecting my privacy when I trusted her enough to think she would never do so. Her reasoning for looking through my phone in the first place was to find a specific photo for her phone. It still angers me that she couldn't be bothered to ask me for this one stupid photo and chose to violate my trust instead. As much as I love her and as much as she loves me, I don't think I will ever forgive her for what she did. I worry for today's youth. My high school-age son has never had device blocking/filtering software on anything at any age. Worst issue to date, malware from video game hacks. I'm an old IT guy and hacker, so unless he is running a virtual machine, he just does nothing more untoward than watching anime late on school nights. He is oblivious to what freedom means, or just perhaps he is smarter than his old dad. Time will tell. He is/was a straight A student that I had to explain to that a few B's would be okay after some recent health issues. He is into less than 16 than I was at 10, but come to think of it, I never got caught either. Okay, for the few people on watching this that don't know what Rule 34 is, which, God, has been around for a while, it's the idea that if it exists on the internet, then adult drawings of it must also exist. And so it's just lewd drawings of just about any IP out there. That's about as much as I know. I don't know why you need a hidden folder of it. It's just on the internet, right? You can just find it. I don't know. I don't get keeping folders of that kind of stuff. I guess if you find your favorite, you don't want to have to look for it. I'm having to think about this too much, but I'm old now. I don't care. Do whatever you want, I guess. That's legal, please. Hey folks, Mr. Fax here letting you know that this video contains a number of content warnings for this material on screen right here. And so if you do find yourself uncomfortable with that material, you may want to skip this video or watch with caution. Story 20. I was assaulted, groomed, and manipulated online a few months ago. They used my fear of rejection against me so I couldn't refuse, then blackmailed me when I tried to block them. I've only told one friend. I will never tell my family. Story 21. I had to go to my school in another city. I usually take the metro and minibus from the school, but since it wasn't operating yet, I went with my bike inside the metro, and from there I biked to the school. All good until it was time to come back. I forgot the times bikes are allowed at the metro and couldn't go back with my bike. I had two options. 1, let the bike there, take the metro, and get it back early next day. 2, bike back home, following the metro line or the highway, which it's a really long way. My stupid butt decided since I didn't want to waste more money just to get it back, I would bike it back home. I took another route I knew when I came by car and decided to go by that path for safety. 1 hour later, my shirt is wet as heck, I'm thirsty, and finally get home. I almost didn't have strength left on my legs, and it was leg day. Story 22. My parents hated the Diablo series purely because of the name. Never mind the fact that you're hunting demons, not worshipping them. Well, inevitably, I bought a copy of Diablo 2 and 1 in a combo pack back in the day. And of course, I eventually got caught. Well, of course, they told me to throw it away. Yeah, no, I paid for it out of pocket. No way was I throwing it away. I threw the box away and hid the discs and walkthrough guide under my bottom dresser drawer. Within a few months, I was playing it again. I remember Diablo 2 coming out and parents being like, I don't think that's very good for you kids to be playing with demons and stuff like that. And I will say, the argument you hear against where it's like, you're hunting the demons. But if you're like the necromancer and stuff like that, I gotta say, I think there are certain parents who would still have a problem with it. But really, they should have had more of a problem with just what an absolute time sink that game and all following Diablo games have been. Like, don't get mad about fighting demons. Get mad that you have to spend 40 hours grinding crap. Story 23. Well, I was never going to tell my mother this, but somehow she found out that I have a coping mechanism that isn't the healthiest, yet I'm not trying to harm myself to a great extent, nor do I have plans to do anything serious, and yet she's still taken it seriously, exactly the reason I didn't want to tell her. Story 24. I knew the password for the school computer system. The detention teacher trusted me because we crossed paths because I was being too honest. I saw the login credentials for the school computer network and wrote it down. My last 3 years of school, I made an extra $5,700 every school year on top of what I was making from my job. Story 25. I grabbed my mom's earrings from a case and started playing with them on the bunk bed I slept on at the top, and was at the edge of the bed and dropped one of them on the carpet. Looked and couldn't find it. I was like 5 to 8 years old and my father was vacuuming the carpet, so, oh well. P.S. She doesn't know, but I did tell my father. Story 26. My friend smashed my glasses and said to not get him in trouble that I got caught in a crossfire of bags and went home undetected of me lying, and now I'm scared to speak about my glasses or even have anyone touch my glasses. Story 27. I wasn't at work until close every night that summer. My shift ended at 8. I drove to the next town to have intercourse in my boyfriend's parents' RV, then came home. Thanks for leaving the door unlocked. Oh, and all those times you picked me up from Matt's, I was high as a kite. I gotta tell you right now, and this goes for a number of these, I think, but there's a good chance your parents know and just aren't going to say anything because either they're like, you know what, they're responsible enough, they can live their life, or they're not saying anything because they're uncomfortable with it and they don't know how to handle it and don't want to screw things up. But a lot of people I know who are just like, oh man, you know, the stuff I got away with that my parents ever know, the moment they bring it up to their parents are like, of course we knew you were high. Do you not think we have noses or couldn't see how red your eyes were? But you were a good enough kid. Everyone experiments. Like, seriously, so many of you think you're getting away with stuff, and you're not. Story 28. Something I won't tell them, that I'm non-binary, demi-boy, and omni. Tried to tell them and got told that I'm a girl because I was born one. Worst day ever. It hurt my feelings so much. Now I can't see any of my Roblox friends. My friends that actually understand me. Now I'll be staying in the closet forever. I hate myself for telling them that. Story 29. We were homeless for half a year and stayed in some cheap butt hotel. I had super religious parents and I was pretty isolated. I was homeschooled and I wasn't allowed to do anything. Pretty crappy and pretty lonely. In my room, there was a window with the screen broken out of it. So, with my good Christian morals in mind, I snuck out. Every single night for half a year. We were in a pretty dangerous area, like this place was a crack den. Witnessed a drug deal at an old Sonic's. I got chased by this car with no headlights, lots of close calls. These adventures usually lasted from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., and when my parents asked why I was always so tired during the day, I just say nightmares and rub my eyes a few times to get them to leave me alone. Chased around possums and ran alongside cars down the empty road. They still think I'm their perfect little angel, but I have a majority of these outings on video. I was 14, lol. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.